Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday, and welcome to Restoring Our Roots podcast, the voice of the Decriminalize Nature movement. This podcast is a gathering space where we explore the wisdom of entheogenic plants and fungi, the beauty of natural healing, and the importance of reconnecting with the sacred earth. Twice a month, or more or less, we'll hear from visionaries, healers, and advocates who are working with entheogenic plants and fungi, exploring realms of consciousness, and returning us to a balanced relationship with nature. My name is Larry Norris. I'm the co founder of Decriminalize Nature. I'm also the national organizing director. I'm lucky enough to be able to help people all across the U.S. Pass policy locally to make sure that this is essentially decriminalized in the area. If you are interested in doing that locally, please give us a shout out. Contact us at info@decriminalizenature.org, and we do a monthly orientation. It's going to be a pretty incredible 2026. We had our monthly orientation a couple last week, I think, and we had over, I think, about 30 people show up. So that's pretty impressive in terms of active cities making things happen. So looking forward to that. So please reach out to us if you want to help out with that. I'd also like to introduce Rachel, who's been helping us out with the behind the scenes, production of this wonderful podcast. So thank you, Rachel, for all your help and support. Rachel will be both posting this on Spotify, following this excuse me, and other platforms as well, following this podcast. But also after this podcast, around the last 10 minutes or something, uh, Rachel will be organizing and collecting all the comments you have. So if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat box. And in the last 10 minutes, Rachel will be asking us what those are and bring us to a conclusion for the show. So thank you, Rachel, for being here. Really appreciate it as always. I know Rachel had some snowstorm out there in Toronto, so we're lucky here in California. We got some sunshine, which I'm loving as well. Gwen and myself. So really happy to be here today. Gwen, really thank you for being here. We'd like to introduce Gwen as someone that I've known for a couple of years now and been really impressed with the work that you've been doing. You do psychedelic integration work, which I'm also very interested in integration work as well. You're a therapist, you're a psychedelic assisted therapist as well, and you've been doing this work for quite some time. So I'm really excited to have you on the show and hear what you have to say. So looking forward to this great conversation with the audience. Yeah. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Larry. And yes, Rachel, thank you for being the wizard behind the scenes, the tech witch. I'm Gwen Pelfini. Yes, I'm doing really well. I can't complain. We've got some sunshine finally. Sorry for our
Yeah.
East Coasters. Yes, as you eloquently laid out, thank you so much. I am a multi-licensed psychotherapist, actually also licensed in New York. So I've been following and supporting my New York clients who've been navigating the tough winter we've been having, as well as California, and soon to be also licensed in Hawaii. I'm also certified as a psychedelic assisted therapist provider, and can go into the details of what exactly that looks like, really utilizing plant, mushroom, and synthetic type of medicines as allies. They're all allies. I see them all as allies, sentient beings in all types of ways. And I look at it as a tool among many other tools, just like EMDR as a modality, therapeutic modality, is a tool. And also really very passionate about education, psychoeducation, so that we can build a literacy as we're tracking the legality, the research alongside this psychedelic renaissance that is resurging, making sure that people understand and are armed with education. So passionate about really just creating conversations like these so that we can normalize and educate ourselves and make sovereign decisions informed by as much education and connection with community as possible. So yeah, preparation can look like education, as well as sitting with certain medicine, as well as, yes, integration is just as important of a bookend. This is how we actually implement all of the gems and pearls of wisdom from our journeys, micro, low dose, or macro dose type of journeys, implementing all of what the heck happened into our daily lives so that we can actually move with change. And ultimately, I just see it as helping people connect with themselves, connect with their inner healing intelligence, and tapping into the wisdom of nature is a beautiful way to do so. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Larry, for inviting me. Yes, I likewise am such a cheerleader and fan and supporter of your work and Decrim Nature. Not enough conversation, never enough. So happy to be here. Happy to see where this conversation flows.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm sure we can jump in a little bit more into the different nuances you're speaking about in terms of the therapeutic modalities you're bringing forward. But the question we always ask everyone kind of at the beginning is, how did you, this is sort of a fringe area, if you will, it's not because it's becoming a little bit less so now, but it's always interesting to hear people's stories, how they got into this. What sort of drew you to this area of research, this area of study, this area of therapy, and maybe share a little bit about your process there.
Thank you for asking. I do think it's important to learn not just the content from various people in the field, but also learn their connection to the work.
Right.
To be completely honest, I do appreciate transparency in every kind of way, even as a therapist. I'm a human first. I reiterate this all the time. So first off, I never would have imagined being able to work with this kind of medicine, psychedelic medicine, in my career. I didn't necessarily set out to be able to even do this, let alone even really conceive of being able to do this. So I I started my career. Uh, well, I actually have a background in music and art, and then went back to school for grad school. I studied mental health counseling, and it wasn't until I was working toward my licensure that I even found the program that I ended up graduating from with IPI, the Integrative Psychiatry Institute in Colorado, to get a certification in psychedelic assisted therapy. I think though truly the origin of or calling or answer to your question really though is I was 15 when I first began my own personal journey with psychedelic medicine. I grew up in the Bay Area. Context just for normalizing access and just the conversation, let alone experimentation. So certainly California, especially in the Bay Area, that is relative, right? So I was relatively young when I first tried mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and that quickly evolved into an appreciation and a real a better understanding of these medicines, again, as I mentioned, as allies, as as tools, as partners along my own personal development, my own growth journey, and understanding myself and getting into my own psychology and shadow work. So I think really, and I do want to introduce because now I have to move and she's going to wake up. This is Lucy. This is my Lucy
Hey,
girl,
Lucy.
my apprentice. She is registered as a both therapy and service dog. So if anyone knows me or has seen me, you've seen Lucy. She came to psychedelic science this past June. So she's probably gonna pass out again. Um, I just was wrapping with yeah my mental health, which then led to my career in mental health, alongside my hand in hand journey experimentation with psychedelics myself, very much parallel process and continue to be so.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I imagine for myself and probably everyone that's on this call to see how these can be so beneficial for mental health in so many ways, and also sometimes difficult and challenging. But you can find your ways to break through challenges that you hadn't experienced before, hadn't expected before, through this little extra sort of push, if you will, of the psychedelics or the entheogens. I noticed you called them allies, which I really appreciate. Maybe for the audience that's maybe unfamiliar with how that could be, could you maybe explain or define a little bit more what you mean by an ally of psychedelic or entheogen? Yeah.
Sure. From my experience and my opinion and perspective, also informed by my education and training, but mostly personal experience, I absolutely, I mean, what is an ally? An ally is a supporter. An ally can be a partner. And so I see these medicines as I may have also mentioned them as a sentient being, right? Like they have their own consciousness, they have their own lineage of wisdom, and engaging with them allows for a partnership. You're cultivating a relationship with this medicine. So utilizing them as I prefer ally than tool, because tool, that word feels a little bit extractive and transactional, and I think part of respecting also the fact that psychedelic medicine is not new. It's been practiced, this relationship has been practiced all over the world for thousands of years. And so also a nod and reverence to indigenous wisdom and practices. I think again, the reframe of utilizing and even just the language of ally as a partner, as a relationship, rather than what sometimes can sound like, feel like, and actually really unfortunately be more of a transactional kind of extraction of downloads, right? And biohacking is another kind of term that can speak to this really sacred work a little bit. I think respecting the process in that way. One way we can do that is minding our language in that way.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. And if somebody out there is not familiar with building a relationship with what they might consider to be inanimate, or to understand the spirit beyond, do you have any tips for somebody that's coming into this, of like how would you build a relationship, or what types of things would you engage with to sort of start that relationship building with one of these plants or mushrooms or synthetics?
Just teeing me up so well, Larry. Thank you. I do have a lot to say around cultivating a relationship with the medicine. First and foremost, prefacing because I do tangent, but I'll bring it back. I think, and I have seen that even just that seedling of curiosity is the beginning of your relationship with a medicine. Even if you're just like, huh, head tilt about a medicine, that is a calling, an invitation to continue to cultivate and feed the relationship. So it starts way before we ever consume the medicine or even think about consuming. It can just be sparked by a curiosity, right? So even just opening up and widening our schema, our thought, our umbrella around what a relationship with medicine can be, just even starting from the curiosity. And then I invite people, always encouraging them to follow that curiosity, find outlets, find groups, find conversations, find people, find podcasts, find groups where these conversations are being normalized and celebrated, so that you can ask your questions or even just kind of participate in whatever way, little or larger kind of participation actively. And again, returning to your own relationship with medicine, I recently, in the past year and a half or so, started to experiment and play with the fruiting body of mushrooms with art. And actually, I'm sporting one of my newest little designs here. These are actual mushrooms. These specifically are a variety called Psilocybe tempenensis, and they're more rare. They're not a cubensis. They're a more rare and very potent psychedelic medicine. And I adorn myself. I wear them um, as my own kind of reverence and um yeah, strengthening my relationship with the medicine. I feel very protected and rooted when I wear them. And I again, it for me feels like working with the medicine, even just with my hands, and creating art out of it, feels like a really fun way. They're fun guys, right? So like being able to be playful, that can be medicine. Being able to express yourself through art, oh my gosh, creativity goes hand in hand with a lot of these medicines and can be cathartic and therapeutic on its own. So I invite for your own, yes, community, and also for your own cultivation of your relationship with the medicine, to be playful and curious around creative ways to tap into your relationship, building your relationship with medicine too.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about creativity in a minute, though. I know that's a whole nother ball we can sort of open up. But even interesting in this regard, you hear, so many different terms for these different substances, from psychedelic to, which is more mind manifesting, which maybe doesn't have that relational building type thing. You have entheogen, so that's that divine within. So there maybe is more of a relational type thing. But then you talk about like you're saying, plant allies, plant teachers, plant guides, plant spirits, ancestral sacred plants, all these different other ways of kind of mm, changing that relationship in terms of not feeling like it's just a thing that
Yeah.
you're participating in, but that you're building a relationship with. And I know I've talked to a lot of people, especially around ayahuasca and other things, where it's like, until you've built that relationship, oftentimes you can't go into these other domains, not that it's like restricting, but that it's almost like there's this like this play that you're speaking to, or this like this connection that needs to happen over time as you sort of move further and then can get further and further down the way. As you think about these ideas of like allies and sort of plant teacher, plant spirit, what have you, uh, what types of things do you think about in terms of I don't know, like discernment is always an issue, right? How do I know, is this coming from me or is this coming from the plant or the mushroom? Is it
Mm.
important? How do I discern if this message is something like tomorrow you need to go do this thing, or that's where the integration comes in, maybe take some time to integrate that.
Yeah.
How do you sort of work with discernment outside of integration, just in terms of the conversation or the relationship building that you're having with the materials?
I appreciate the question, but also the immediate follow-up of like, does it matter? Also, right? Like where that's coming from. And I think essentially it is coming from your brain, right? And then there's layers on how we can interpret, right? Is how much of it is um, something that the medicine woke up in within you that maybe was dormant or unconscious, subconscious on some other level that you haven't explored enough. So I think that right there can remain open ended in and of itself in terms of where it came from, and then the follow-up of like, well, does the question is it even the right question in terms of what you then do with that information? And I think across the board, I've been told, and I reiterate, especially for a larger dose journey, and especially for downloads or ideas that might seem very much out of your norm, wait. Before you make any big life decisions or changes, wait and integrate and process and explore and play with the idea, right? It doesn't mean no. It doesn't mean invalidate. It's actually more respect toward that idea or that calling or that need, whatever it's bringing out in you. I see it as more respect toward the medicine, respect toward the process, and of whatever that is, the content, to really sit with it with yourself after sitting with the medicine and really feel out. This is where it can be really, really helpful to do so with somebody else. Someone, I don't really, whether it's a coach or a counselor, some of that is more of what's important is really the relationship there too. You want to make sure that they are trained in some kind of way, whether it's uh, through an educational program training or working underneath someone, apprenticing in some kind of lineage or other way, making sure that they are a reputable, solid resource for you, and that the relationship there is really tight and strong and rooted, and there's a trust and a safety, and being able to then really expand into some of those ideas so that you can properly play with them and feel just as grounded in implementation as you may in receiving that insight.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I love the idea of play and curiosity and those types of terms. And they're so important in this because it's like when you're curious and you're playful, you're not necessarily going to say, okay, this is the answer, right? And I'm curious, like, okay, where are the edges to this answer? Or what's the next thing I can do? Or how can I dance with this idea that I have? But you're right on about like, I can't tell you how many friends I've had that sometimes the experience comes through so strongly and you're so excited about it
Yeah.
that like I'm quitting my job tomorrow is the response that comes out, and people find themselves in binds because all of a sudden this insight came through and then make some drastic change. And so yeah, I've heard like wait about 2 weeks or maybe more depending upon for any type of life decision that's going to be major, just because sometimes those insights come in more of a trickstery fashion where
Or
maybe it wasn't. Go ahead.
finish your thought. Yeah,
I just
go
said,
ahead.
well, maybe it isn't like, oh, I need to quit my job, but maybe I just need to make sure I have a boundary around the 5 o'clock time, or I need to tell my boss to not call me after work, or all the like. There's a lot of other nuances that could come in play, but that's going to show you kind of the bigger conversation, and then you sort of have to unpack that a little bit more.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your framing of the edges. Really going to the edge. Does that sit? Does that resonate? Nope, that's not right. Okay, how about this other extreme edge, right? Like, but that requires not only time, because that is a factor, especially when we're thinking about just neurologically, the window of neuroplasticity is a real factor in terms of taking advantage of some of the neuroplasticity in our brain that these medicines are providing that does make our brain more receptive to this deeper healing work. So there is time frame as a factor, but also what are you doing in that time frame? I really appreciate, and I always nod to the psychedelic scientist Manesh Gurn, who explains neuroplasticity as neutral, right? So if you recognize that the more you feed something, the more you'll do that thing, right? So it's not. It also is a mirror and emphasizes that it's not just about consuming the medicine and experiencing this journey or this you know mind altering or state of non-ordinary state of consciousness. It's also recognizing that what it's going to give you is sort of this clean slate to be able to feed more of what you're wanting in your life. So what you do in that time of that post journey experience while your brain is in a neuroplastic state is it's very it's important because it can inform then the changes that you want to make. So to your point, really sitting with it, but also playing with it in that time frame makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's almost like a muscle that you sort of need to pay attention to and build in that area of expertise, and hopefully then, as far as I understand it, the neuroplasticity will grow towards where that is being worked or that muscle is being sort of engaged in, if you will. If our brain's a muscle, right? Yeah.
And to that point too, if anyone has been in the gym, right, we know that yes, the resistance, the tension is the lifting of the weights, right? The exercise itself is important. Also, what is it doing though in that process? If you recognize at like a muscular level, it's literally tearing at those fibers in your muscle. So there could be some discomfort in the process, just to nod to any kind of discomfort in this process too, that we can also look at from very different from many different perspectives, right? It doesn't have to be labeled and categorized only as a bad trip. Like some of that discomfort serves us. And then what's just as important as lifting weights, resting. So
Stretching too.
that right, all of those muscles can come back stronger. Those fibers can integrate, right, and come back stronger. So our rest, our integration is it very much mirrors that growth process too.
Mhm. And I know I think we've had this conversation before, but if not, we'll have it on the fly right now. But I know you
Sure.
mentioned both the words integration and implementation. How
Mm,
do you differentiate those two words, and both in practice and sort of theory?
beautiful. So I see, I mean, both of these are actions, right? However, I see implementation, even like the word, I kind of see it as incorporating and then like taking an actionable step of doing the thing, whereas integration feels still close enough to the experience itself where I see it more so as that like resting reflection, right? Not that it's not an action. Reflection is an action. It can stir up a lot more, in fact, within us. And however, it's not quite yet implementing or placing the change in our lives quite yet.
Yeah, I like that sort of distinction there. That's something I kind of talked a little bit about in my dissertation as well. It's just like, if we just talk about integration, then and we assume that integration is also implementation, then we'll be integrating till the end of our lives and maybe never get the experience done, right? But if we kind of separate them out and let that moment that's close for the reflection, for the unpacking, for the understanding, for the is this more of a trickstery idea or am I getting the message? Is there something I'm missing and my bias is getting in the way or influencing something that I didn't understand before? That unpacking process, I think, is necessary to like single out as itself. And then, like you say, taking those insights then now with maybe constructive feedback from others or talking to, as you said, a coach or someone else that is familiar with this area, even a friend that knows and has had many, many experiences can be really helpful with this. And then say, okay, what if this was important and how when I implement this, can this move through? Because it seems like oftentimes implementation could have big impacts on community and things like that. And then, if we make a major change in a life, then maybe we either gain some new community or lose some old community. And so there's this process of like really trying to make sure that you're held within that context where other people can then hear what you're saying and be able to support you for accountability and other things in the implementation process. So I really like how you sort of made that distinction there.
Absolutely. And I think to your point too, it doesn't have to just be here and now this is this phase and this is this phase and this is this phase, right? Like this is not a linear process,
Right.
right? Integrate, implement, integrate again. How did that work, right? Life is beta. We experiment, we play, we use that experience to then inform modification moving forward. What's that Maya Angelou quotation of when we know better, do better? So
Mhm.
use the information of the experience to then inform how to modify it in a way to improve and get more deeply rooted with your integrity and how you want to live and move in the world. And it is a ripple effect out to the world for sure.
Is there a term for the third step there then, which is after you've implemented rechecking on the integration? Has that been made up, or are we going to write a paper in the future on this, or what?
I mean, like life?
Life, right? Yeah, yeah, sure. No, man, because I like that because it's something you don't really hear too much. Is like, okay, now I've implemented. Was that implementation accurate? Did I understand my insight correctly? Or maybe a new insight comes out from that implementation process that you didn't expect before, and now you have to go back to the integration process again. So, it's not like say linear, but you're kind of all constantly feeding that. And you mentioned downloads a few times, but downloads are another thing where you might have heard this term symbolic latency, right? Where it's almost like you have these seeds that were planted in your experience or this download. People have this all the time. I had this big download, but I don't even know what it was.
Right.
What does it even mean? And then it takes some time for things to sort of develop for life to happen before all the lessons line up where then that seed now is sprouting or that download now makes sense. I can crack into it, so to speak, and understand it in a different layer. So I like this sort of this constant feedback loop that we're creating with our own life to be able to sort of engage with our experiences more deeply.
Because we're going to be interacting back into our daily life. And so those factors, those conversations, those ruptures, those ways that we may start to move differently are going to bring up more.
Hmm.
So I don't know that it's necessarily like about now categorizing and labeling the third phase as much as defining and maybe redefining the entirety of the intention of all of this, right? If we're seeing it as a continuation, because this is the way that this is my orientation to the world as a living, evolving human, then it is going to be ongoing. It's going to be a conscious, ongoing evolution of new information, implementation, reflection, new information, implementation, right?
So you work obviously with a lot of folks. I'm guessing this is integration is probably a part of your practice, at least to some degree. Uh, it seems like, well, at least when we were doing integration, there's always like there's like the mental health integration, right? But then there's also the weird integration. What is some weird things that you've heard out there in terms of places people have gone, and then also how do you help someone with something that's so far beyond even humanity? We're talking about bigger question, existential questions, spiritual questions, very profound, weird questions. How do you help someone ground that information?
I mean, especially this is such a timely question too, because of the state of the world and our country and our relationship between um, our government and the rest of the world too, which maybe that's how new is that actually? Um, I think some of this philosophical, existential spectrum of curiosity to even fear and more intense experience of what's going on. I've supported and worked with clients who have been on that extreme separate from psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where for them for themselves or for their friends, family, community, they're genuinely fearful of what is going on or what could happen. And I don't want to go too far into engaging with the politics aspect there, but that's a reality too of living in this country, of living on this globe where uh, it can bring up fear, and often now speaking to engaging with psychedelics, we can be exposed to those parts of ourselves in a more intense way, especially if maybe we haven't really engaged with those types of thoughts or parts of ourselves. And so when working with people who may be expressing overwhelm with some of those parts of ourselves, of themselves, first just normalizing and just right now use the word parts. So one therapeutic approach for those out there who are curious and maybe have already heard of parts work, IFS, internal family systems, just a therapeutic approach where we can engage and talk about building a relationship, really starting to cultivate and the nuances of relating to each of those parts and respecting and normalizing the fact that okay, there's this whole other way of thinking or uh surge of emotions and orientation to this thing going on in the world, or within myself in relationship to the world, that I am distracted by, that I am excited by, that I am terrified by, right? Like that I don't know what to do with now. So just normalizing that, guess what? That's part of being human. And some of the most beautiful spectrum, large spectrum, beautiful, right? Beautiful, uh, loving, and terrifying parts of human experience are this multifacetedness of experience, right? Experiencing seemingly opposing feelings, desires, sensations simultaneously. And, we think of grief, I use that as a really easy way to see this duality or this sort of dialectic aspect of human experience. Because when we do experience loss and grief, it can it can, for example, bring deep sadness while also simultaneously bringing a sense of relief, if anyone can relate to that seemingly opposing kind of spectrum of experience that is coexisting within us, that can flood with confusion too. And again, the feedback loop of fear that can come up with that. So to answer your question directly, really first just normalizing that is part of our human experience. And when psychedelics are enter the part of that experience, it can bring up these, that's why we call it shadow. It's this, we can't really fully see a shadow, right? It's behind us, but now psychedelics shines a light and we're almost blinded by the newness, the extreme, the multifaceted layers of that part of our experience.
Yeah, that's great. I know that you mentioned earlier you were talking about having a background in music and art as well. How much of that, if at least for your personal or for maybe your clients or what have you, do you help them incorporate? And is that something that can also be an additional, tool in the toolbox, if you will, without using maybe, or maybe another ally, if you want to use those terminology, ally for your process around, the integration or implementation of your work?
Absolutely ally. Absolutely. Music is absolutely an ally in how we relate in the world. For me, it started because this is a podcast, I could just totally be myself and share. Yeah, for me, it started. I have brothers, and a young girl growing up in the early '90s, I was singing TLC in the mirror, and my older brother would tell me to shut up from the other room. And so truly my own exploration and experimentation and throwing myself 3,000 miles across the country, deciding to live in New York and pursue music really was because of that. It was my facing something deep inside me that I loved, that also I felt super vulnerable and not confident about. So I I went to New York because what better extreme way to explore something like that? And had my own life as a singer, and then yeah, that came back around, and I've been weaving that into my practice for my own personal growth and development, and more recently into some sound healing that I am building on this year, to provide actually like a complement to journeys, because music is a beautiful complement and um, vessel through which to navigate a journey. And so for people in providing a vocal activation, sound healing, sound baths, that's one way that I provide both an outlet for myself in that expression, as well as a way to connect with others. And I receive my own downloads in those moments that are, each one is different. I don't know. Very much still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but at the end of a sound bath, people are crying. I even brought a sound bath to an open mic, that place that I love to go to in the city, because I just felt like the community needed it. Now, this is like a dive bar, okay? So like no one had ever experienced a sound bath at this open mic. And I'm not even kidding. At the end of it, people were coming up to me like crying. And some of those who shared that they thought sound baths were stupid or didn't understand it or had never experienced that particular type, because I'm singing during the sound bath. And so it becomes a beautiful cathartic experience for me, a connection with others, and a reflection of what other people are experiencing, because I can kind of feel it and then reflect it. So it's like an expression, an outlet, a mirror, a validation in their own journey. And then I'll soon be, yeah, providing specifically for psychedelic experiences, sort of this complement sound healing music.
That's great. Yeah, it's amazing that how music can tap us into these different spaces and how quickly they can change a journey. And I mean, that's where even like sort of the 60s and 70s, the jam bands, were sort of classic for like being able to take you into these emotional states and up and down, and even some of the some more sort of contemporary electronic scenes, the party scenes, the rave scenes, all that same thing, kind
Yeah.
of take you in and out of these different spaces through the music. And I've really been interested in, and I haven't done this too much, but re-listening to the music that I was listening to during my journey,
Mm,
because finding a way to tap into something that was in the experience that kind of dissipated as all the other things happened, and you can, you naturally forget some things, but then hearing the music again and then doing some artwork or something like that and trying to like tap into, by not using any words, tapping into these different feelings, emotions, states of mind, existential questions, all that kind of stuff that comes up that maybe had just been buried with all the other things that are happening in the speed of these journeys that happen sometimes really fast and really quickly, you know. So I really like this sort of this interconnection and how these sort of nonverbal states of creativity can really help us, you know, tap into something deeper because we're not thinking so much here, but like maybe here or the rest of our body, right?
Absolutely. And I'm thinking of the word like reintegration in terms of what you just shared for yourself, um, re-engaging with some of the allies, some of the experience. What were you smelling during that time? What were you what kind of environment were you in? What were you listening to? Re-engaging. What might you have written? Rereading that, and then I love the idea of re-engaging maybe after the fact, right? And then, yeah, really tapping into the somatic experience of like thinking just all five senses again. And then something that made me think about specifically ketamine because it's a dissociative anesthetic, being able to recognize that, yeah, there may be other aspects of expression that feel more resonant than others, depending on the medicine itself. So, for example, with mushrooms, for example, you might be dancing, and so listening to that music again, or engaging with those movements again. But with ketamine, you're certainly not going to be writing, right? But you might the music again, the auditory association may pull up some other aspect or reorientation to the experience. You might not have words easily accessible after a ketamine journey, for example. So, what are some other outlets that you can tap into, like coloring, drawing, other aspects of expression? I really appreciate the nuance of what can be available to be able to redefine what integration looks like, and then some reintegration of reading, rereading, re-listening to, or engaging with these things later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we talked on Friday a little bit about you went to a nice, interesting little conference down in I think San Diego called was it Imaginarium? Uh,
Imaginarium, yes.
so tell us a little bit about what you learned there, or maybe what you're also thinking about the creative process and the imagination process, especially as it comes to both our inner experience, but also we're all visioning forward right now. We're all thinking
Yeah.
about what this could look like once the laws change and shift, and when they're not just siloed in a medical clinical doctor's office, but also what does this mean for the transformation of ourselves and culture and society and what have you. So speak a little bit about creativity and stuff that you learned, maybe you saw there, and then also this idea of imagination and how we can see this forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Shout out to again Manesh Gurn. He is associated with Center of Minds and brought Imaginarium forward with, oh, help me out, Larry. Uh,
District 216, or I know they
District
were
16, but also not Damon.
Bruce Damer.
Damer.
Yeah.
Yes, with Bruce Damer. And so Imaginarium Symposium came alive in San Diego, a full day with so many amazing people that clearly I'm not going to be able to rename, but maybe we can post in the post kind of debrief, because every aspect was so interesting to be able to dive a little bit deeper in the understanding of imagination, even just defining imagination and breaking it down from like a research perspective, recognizing that even just one, for example, just to be specific, one way that they looked at defining imagination and creativity was different ways to be able to utilize something. So he gave the example of like, here's a brick. How many different ways can you use this brick, right? Well, it can be a doorstop. Okay. Yep. You can throw it at someone or something, right? Or you can break it down and create a paste and use it as a artistic tool or makeup, or right, like different ways of thinking about utilize something is one way to define creativity and imagination, and ways in which then enters psychedelics can enhance the ability to think differently about even defining things, how to define things differently when we're hello on a in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, and how psychedelics can bring new ideas. um, Alex and Allison Gray were also there at the conference. Shout out to them. I was able to sit down with them for dinner afterward and pick their brains, and so even just talking to Alex specifically about how he receives these downloads or these images. If you've not looked at one of his paintings, please immediately after listening, go look up Alex Gray, and his artwork is the way in which he talk about integration and implementation. I don't know how he then remembers the nuance of all of the colors and nuances that he sees in a psychedelic journey and then recreates. So part of Imaginarium was really looking at the nuances of definition, and then also how do we quantify, how do we measure, how do we actually break down through a scientific and research perspective to uh to gauge ways in which psychedelics and different types of psychedelics too, getting nuanced amongst different types of medicines, can bring in and enhance these different ways of relating to either a brick, for example, or a way of wanting to get towards something. Think also just like new ways, like treatment. There were a few examples throughout the symposium of everyone from medical doctors, Nobel, various experts in various fields who have sort of nodded to psychedelics as their breakthrough moment, or in some way, shape, or form informed and led them to their idea that changed the game for their respective field. So it's an definitely an ongoing conversation. Jim Fadiman, who is sort of the father of microdosing, but also and this wasn't brought up in the symposium, so I will make sure to platform you right now, Jim. Uh, he's also the father of looking at creativity and imagination too. So look into his work, and maybe this can be kind of a reintegration to your earlier point, Larry, of also looking backward and into some of the work that's already been done, and both respecting but also pulling the thread through around some of the conversations that have been had, and uh, learning different ways to relate to questions that have been posed and started to be answered already.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm glad you brought up Jim Fadiman, especially in regards to creativity, because you don't see that research happening now because there isn't the big financial incentive of pharmaceutical companies to make people more creative, right? They have these treatment resistant depression or anxiety or these other things that we know we have money can come back from that. But creativity is like, okay, figure something out. So even his subject design or his methodologies back in I think it was the late 60s, mid 60s, because I remember there's a story about, yeah, late 60s, early 70s, because there's a story about him getting a letter while the project was going on saying, okay, everything's been criminalized, you got to stop this project. And he's like, I'll see that letter tomorrow. How about that?
Yes,
Let
yes.
everyone do their thing. But there supposedly was, there's some interesting criteria, whereas like this person had to have been working on this issue, this, challenge, whether it be intellectual or artistic or what have you, for X amount of times and not been able to find a breakthrough, and then go in these experiences and kind of think about it and see if that really helped to inspire. And I think that generally speaking, we don't hear too much about the different types of creative breakthroughs that are happening because of the stigma. But I
Mm,
bet we'd be surprised that there's a lot more out there than we even know because of this. We have some research from Johns Hopkins. I think Catherine McLean, I believe is her name, did some work on this being about helping with the openness and
mhm,
that type of thing. So when we have these ideas, we can sort of get outside of our own head and look at things in a different way, just like the eureka moment, right? With gold and the density and how that was found once upon. I think Archimedes was, I think that's who it was, where like he was working on this problem and his wife was like, oh. just go take a bath and relax, and he didn't want to, and then finally he did, and he sat in the bathtub and watched the water go up and had his breakthrough moment, right? So same sort of thing when you stop thinking about it for a minute, when you
Yeah.
give someone an opportunity to think of it through a different lens, through a different light, through a different perspective. And I think if we were to think about that and even bring some of that research back again in a similar way that Fadiman did, maybe that would really help to solve a lot of the, we're in a moment right now where there are crises happening everywhere, and to have some sort of beautiful insight in terms of like, hey, let's have you tried this before? Let's give it a try. Even if it's just like a parallel track to give some other new approach a try. Let's see what can happen there. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought him in the conversation, because for my interest in psychedelics too, that was very much where I started in terms of like, oh, this can be done academically, but not in like a mental health way, but in like a creativity way. And then there's so much to be explored, even like what is creativity, what is imagination, all these types of questions that came up in this conversation I think were really great. So um great, wonderful. Yeah, so yes, that's great. I'm glad that it went well. Are they doing this now every year? Is this something that
I hope so.
yeah,
I really hope so. I think there was a lot of information in this beta that came up of ways to deep dive more, and so I can't think of why they wouldn't. So hopefully they do. Yeah, and just to piggyback off your last comment, Damer really, I appreciated what he shared about his own transparency, that he finally brought in his experience with psychedelics as a really significant part of his process. And I think just normalizing the conversation so we can destigmatize it and share in the curiosity is a big step toward then being able to be creative in how we look at really utilizing them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm so excited for, while it's nice to see people getting help for a variety of conditions right now, it's like the research that's like waiting on the other side of all that we can do, like what is consciousness? Do we go places? What is creativity? What is imagination? Like these are the types of questions that I'm pumped to start seeing it being explored. And it's been explored, over the many
Yeah.
years and underground and in different cultures and that type of thing, so, but like in a way that like, we kind of move through this sort of period we're at right now, which is a lot of people are dealing with challenges that they need to work on. But then next stage in terms of like really exploring what it is, what are these experiences about? What is this relationship building we're doing? Is there an entity that we're having a conversation with or not? Can we go places? What are archetypes? All these types of fun
Well,
questions.
and it can be kind of like this expansion and contraction where we're getting real meta and macro, and also I have to take out the trash and make sure to go grocery shopping, and I'm working through this thing that I thought I'd worked through already and now it's coming back around, and so can I get nuanced and give myself space and resources to be able to work on this thing, and then maybe have capacity to expand again and ask these types of questions in a way that is a balance of moderation and again human, right? It's ongoing. I think that these are questions that we've been asking forever. So also normalizing and celebrating being able to both ask them and yeah, take care of ourselves the best we can too.
Yeah, and I definitely see, even from my own experiences, notice that when I do ask those questions, oftentimes the personal is somehow, embedded in all of that as well. So you're constantly working on both at the same time, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So I have one question that I always ask everybody at the end here, and then we'll jump into the questions that Rachel has. But uh, the question we ask is, it's very curious how people sort of view this sort of beautiful movement that's been going on, and sort of what's going on in terms of you know the process. But the question I have is, when I say the words decriminalize nature, what does that mean to you?
I love the name because it does, I think, bring up so much. And there's a little bit of an attitude that it brings too, because one might immediately think, well, what does that even mean, right? It inherently imposes the idea that that nature is criminalized, and I think also inherently people generally outside of this conversation would disagree with that being okay. And yet, in so many ways, it's not only not okay, but it is happening. It has been happening. And so to this name and language can be so powerful in this way because it's playful in its attitude and also in its directness of what you guys stand for and what your mission is, and playing with the it's playful in the ways in which you are forcing people to acknowledge that currently there are ways in which nature is criminalized. So that's what comes up for me. I get like a smirk kind of nod and playfulness in the way that we're pointing to a reality that some people in some ways don't want to see.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's pretty much on point in terms of even just how we were strategizing it as well. I mean, of course, there's no wrong or right answer. I'm always curious to see how does that phrase land? How does this movement land? How does the sort of the last 7 years? Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that it's been 7 years now. I think now, 10 million people live in a decriminalized area. I think the Rand report recently just came out not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, that said 11 million people had an experience in 2025, right? So we're almost getting to percentages that tip the scale in terms of national conversation, which is
Wow.
pretty great. So, of course, it's all the things happening with all the people out there, but I think this is one of those things where now we can engage people, we can have them go and start to participate. They're becoming the sort of the megaphone of like destigmatization. They're doing the education with their elected officials, with their law enforcement, and everything else. So it's like again this like grassroots conversation that's sort of happening that keeps us involved instead of it being in a laboratory that we can't make something, or in a clinical setting that might be expensive for folks or what have you. But it really gets us back on the ground again and into the roots. So yeah, thank you for that.
Love it. Love
Yeah,
it. Thank you.
yeah. So we'll hop it over to Rachel now for a couple questions.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That is crucial. I always say when speaking to a potential client, right? Like, yeah, I've got, I think now 18 letters after my name. I could say all the right things, but it doesn't matter if this, and for those listening and can't see, I'm pointing to myself in the screen or myself and Rachel at this point. If this doesn't feel resonant, it doesn't matter. I work rooted ethos, my group practice, we work very relationally, which just means that we recognize again, we're human first. I'm a human before I'm a therapist, right? And so working relationally in the relationship, in the therapy is a huge part of recognizing that there are nuances here. And so for people who are on the search already, I invite you to tap into your inner healing intelligence, your compass, and feel out that rightness. Yes, you want someone who's reputable and checks off the logistical factors that you're needing. And when you're speaking with someone, when you're learning, the therapist, how does it feel in your body? We work also, Rooted Ethos works very somatically too. So recognizing the body does have a lot of wisdom. And to your point, many other cultures don't even have the language or words for depression or
Yeah.
anxiety. For example, it shows up as a headache or a stomach ache. And so that's how they understand an ailment. And maybe that's where we start. So also to your question, recognizing like your body is constantly giving you information. The body holds wisdom. And a lot of what we do too is working to build a relationship with you and your body. It's not really taught in school. It's not even really like encouraged or celebrated, especially for women, if I may,
Mm.
in society. So cultivating a relationship with your body and its wisdom and learning the language to understand the information it's constantly giving you, that's part of this work too. Ultimately really creating a remembrance to yourself. And that's also how you're going to be able to find the right fit of a therapist is who's speaking to that resonance within you.
Love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a great segue into my question. Because
Okay.
I was a dancer for years, and you talking about singing along to TLC and growing up in the 90s. Literally, me and my friends, I grew up in the like Winnipeg, so we had no like fancy dance classes. So we just learned all the music video dance moves,
Yeah,
from like the Spice Girls or like everything was so intricate back then. I feel like Danny Kane and all the different like making the band stuff. So like all of that for me personally, because I was such a shy girl growing up, going to dance class and the body language, dancing in sync with my girlfriends, it
mm,
formed such a bond with us that's like not words, right? And so I feel like all those other things that music does as well, when you have the same favorite song, that's like that's something, right? I don't know what that is,
absolutely.
but it's a thing, right? And so do you, Gwen, have a song that kind of like reminds you of like your relationship to entheogens, or like kind of like the journey that you're on, or anything that comes to you? Because I find that songs, like sometimes you hear a song on the radio, like, oh my gosh, I forgot I love this song, and it's like the universe talking to you, being like, hey,
Mm.
call this friend maybe.
I mean, there's tons of those kinds of songs that I think pop up and are fun little reminders of, I mean, the part of the brain between memory and imagination are so close too. So like all of those little nuanced kind of associations are really fun. But and to your point of like, what is that thing that when you're in sync, when you're dancing with your girlfriends, when you're I don't know, with your bros listening to a song, like that is coherence.
Yes, yeah,
You're
yeah.
in
I
a
love that
heart.
word so much. I'm so happy you said it.
I just got chills. Yeah,
Yeah.
your
Oh.
hearts are in coherence. And that vibration, that frequency, that the power of that can fucking heal the world. If we were, imagine if we were all in heart coherence. Look into Heart Math Institute. They have a whole thing about getting everyone's hearts in coherence. So, but it also can is something that we relate to differently with psychedelic experiences, unity, this ineffable experience bringing a sense of unity and coherence. So music can absolutely be an ally to bring some of that too. For me, and this is also like a go-to open mic song. Um, Lauryn Hill is just
Oh.
my girl. I can't, I just no words.
Don't be a
And
hard rock when you really are a gem.
right? I mean,
I
there's
know,
so
it's
many
so good.
lines
Yeah.
that we could pull, but the song, my song that I is like the answer to your question is everything is everything.
Now you have to sing it.
Um, okay.
No, I was
Oh,
joking. But
oh,
I would
okay.
love to hear you sing that.
Well, I'll do the first
Just a
line.
little.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can do we have time? Can I do just a tiny? Because
Yes, of
I
If
have
you
this
course.
want,
little
yeah.
We
tiny
can make the time, baby.
I have this tiny little feature that allows me to turn down the although I love her, turn down the main vocal.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So So we're gonna go like this. Okay. Everything is everything. What it's meant to be will be. Yeah. After winter must come spring. Change it comes eventually. One more time. I said everything is everything. Yeah. What it's meant to be will be. After winter must come spring. Change it comes eventually.
OMG. I had full body
Hey.
chills and I so needed that. I was just talking to Larry about how I was having like seasonal depression because of the after winter must come spring. Oh,
Yes.
that was the end of my questions. Thank you for that. That was amazing. All right, back
Thank
to you,
you so
Larry.
much.
Uh,
Thank you,
thank you,
thank you.
Rachel. Appreciate it. Thank you, Gwen, for giving us a little bit of an extra
I love
nugget of yourself
it.
there. It's fantastic. If people want to find out more about you and your practice, or where to watch you do open mic or any of that kind of thing, how do they reach out to you?
Just my name, Gwen Pelfini, Pelfini. That's my website, my Instagram handle. I just got on TikTok. Um, my group practice is called Rooted Ethos. You can also find everything about Rooted Ethos with that name, our handle, our website. And I am happy to connect with anyone who is even just feeling a seedling of curiosity from this talk. Love to answer questions, love to have conversations and connect with you in any way that resonates. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gwen, so much for being here. What a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think we went well over our time frame, so good job. That was flowing real well. And
New
really appreciate you spending a
records.
little of your moment on Sunday just to come here. I know it's a sunny Sunday, but spending some time with us and the audience out there is really fantastic. So really appreciate you being here and looking
So
forward to more
grateful.
conversations with you. Thank you everyone for being here as well, and thank you, Rachel. As a reminder, we usually go live every 2 weeks. We actually will be going live again next week, so come find us at about, I think, at 9. That's earlier in the day. Let's see, what time is it? Going to be 9 a.m., I believe, Pacific time, so 12 Eastern, with Ian Cook, who's from the Kansas Psychedelic Society and is also doing a lot of work with psychedelic integration. It's pretty awesome to see places like Kansas and other folks out there actually doing some of this incredible work, really getting the word out into their different communities. Reminder, everybody, that you can find our shows live on YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey. And next week, or possibly week after, will be this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. So reach out to us, subscribe to our channel, and keep updated. Give a little donation on the donation button if you want to help us keep going here, going strong. And a reminder that we are booked out until about May plus right now in terms of amazing lineup of guests. So if you are someone out there that wants to give a talk, please go ahead and share with us. Otherwise, we have a lot of guests coming up ahead, and excited to have a good, wonderful spring and wonderful summer as well. Hopefully, that'll be a good time for some ease of emotions and getting out of this heavy winter that we're in right now. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Rachel. Looking forward to more. Until next time, tune in, stay rooted, and let's grow together. Have a happy Sunday. Bye bye now.